Inside Business Radio. Tips, tricks and conversation from the world's leading experts. With your host, Neil Bentley.
Hello and welcome to Inside Business Radio. This is Neil Bentley here, and today's very special guest on the show is a self-made multimillionaire who shares his business time between Spain and Monaco. Quite an enviable position to be in. He started at the tender age of 16 and set up a very successful company only a couple of years later. He's been involved and still has interests in various companies, including mobile communications and premium rate telephone lines, interactive gaming, mobile casinos, publishing, television and financial trading. Been featured in various press and media, including The Times and Sunday Independent, Guardian, Sunday Observer, what a list this is, New York Times, Bloomberg, Sky News, Wall Street Journal. I could go on, but I think it's about time we spoke to him. Hello and welcome to Vince Stanzione.
Hi Neil, good to be here.
So before we go any further, Vince, when did it all start for you?
All started from leaving school, Neil, and I'm the first person to admit that I'm probably not the brightest person. Well, I've done very, very well in business. I don't have a degree. I never went to university. Not that I didn't want to. It was a case of, I didn't come from the richest of backgrounds, and it was like 16, well, what are you going to do now? And it was a case of literally going straight into work with a couple of O-levels after leaving school and starting out as a junior.
And where did you start out? I
started out at NatWest, and which now is Royal Bank of Scotland, in something called the World Money Centre. What had happened, a couple of nights before, I'd seen this program, and it was about foreign exchange dealing, which is currency dealing. And I had an interview with NatWest literally a couple of days in London after that, and the lady said, "What do you know?" And I sort of blagged my way. That's the only thing I can describe, because I've seen this program about 2 days ago. And lo and behold, about a month later when I started work, I started out in the same place that I'd seen on TV those couple of nights before.
So what was it that you saw on TV that got you interested in?
It was a big dealing room, like a lot of times you see, and it was about, how currencies, how money gets moved from one country to another. And that's what sort of got me quite interested. I thought, well, that's quite exciting. And at that time, we're talking 1985 now, I'd always been interested in computers, and it was the days of the ZX Spectrum and those sort of things at home. So one big advantage I had, well, I didn't have many qualifications. I knew a little bit about computers. And at that time, they wanted basically young kids who had, knew a bit about computers, who didn't ask any questions, because it was a case of, shut up, boy, do what you're told to do. The salary, just so you know, Neil, was £100 a week. So we're talking not a great amount. Even in 85, £100 a week wasn't a lot. From that, I had to pay £26 a week in train fares because I was living in Luton. So, this isn't sort of living large. This is starting off really as the low of the low.
So if it wasn't the money, because it was only £100, what was it that attracted you to this position?
Like, as you say, £100 a week, and they knew that you weren't doing it for the money. It was a case of actual being in that environment where you could learn. And also, you remember at this time, computers were very, very expensive. Now, these days, your £500 computer does what a big mainframe did in 1985. So I had access to a lot of computer power, and the other thing was, I had the ability to sit next to some of the best traders in the world. Now, these were obnoxious people, they're people that you would hate to work for. And then, I was a T-boy, I'll admit it. I was literally, I was changing rolls of paper, going to McDonald's, all that type of thing. But it gave me a chance to learn. So that's where I started from, very, the low of the low.
That's invaluable experience to be next to those sort of people. By association, you then learn how they use the systems and they work out the currency markets.
Exactly, yeah. But these sort of people, now and then they would show you something, but you had to pick it up yourself almost, and it was interesting. Most of the people that started with me, there was a few people that started as juniors in different sort of areas. They all left after about 6 weeks. Nearly everybody left because these people, they swore at you, they threw things at you, they weren't, this wasn't your normal sort of like management training scheme. This was like, boy, do it or else.
Yeah, it seems like you had to have quite a thick skin to work in that sort of environment.
Well, you did, and I'll be honest, part of the reason why I didn't quit, Neil, was that I was too proud to go back home and say I've left. Do you know what I mean? When you get this big job in the city, you don't want to go back to your parents and say it hasn't worked out. And then my dad would say, "Yeah, I told you you should have been a hairdresser." So it was a case of, you would say, "Yeah, everything's really good," but the truth is, it was hell to start with. But it was worth sticking. It was worth sticking at.
But there was a light that came on in your mind, wasn't there? That, with this computer situation at the time and the fact that you were into it, you knew that the way that computers were going, that there was a possibility to make this this not only to be available in big corporations. You knew that later on, when the prices of computers came down, this could be a portable system.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where it all started from. And I knew at some stage computers would become more and more important in trading. Now our offices at NatWest, they were just literally opposite the stock exchange. Now in '85, you used to have the dealers, the jobbers, and the stockbrokers. You had a dealing floor. In '87, we had something called Big Bang, which was basically where most of the trading went to screens, which is what we have now, much more screen trading. Mm-hmm. So it was moving from the old boy network of my word is my bond and you'd go and speak to somebody to very fast trading by computers, and that was right up my street. It was something that I sort of quickly grasped. So that's where it all started. Okay,
let's home in now on trading itself. When did you make your first trade?
My first trade was when I was 16. Well, before then, the first trade was buying British Telecom shares, which I got I'd saved up some money from Saturday jobs and stuff, and this was the time of all the new issues. And I think this is where a lot of people started off with, if you remember British Gas, if you see Sid Tellim and all those sort of things. Yeah. So I started off with new issues. Then I sort of started trading very, very small, buying stocks, because you have to realize the opportunities that people have got now, where they can trade currencies and commodities. In those days, you really needed a hell of a lot of money. So just starting out, my first trade, my first shares was a £500. And that was about the smallest you could go. So it started off pretty humbly, let's put it this way.
And that was a lot of money for you if you were earning, £100 a week. And
oh yeah, believe me. And I bought these shares from this poor broker, and I must have phoned him up about 10 times a day to check the price. This is pre-internet. So yeah, I know what it's like to start with very little money.
Was it a situation of success from the off? From your first trade, did you make a profit?
No, they did absolutely nothing. In the end, I ended up selling them. So it was like most people, you'll have plenty of frustrating starts when you get started. But it's the case of persevering.
Do you think it's important to have that entrepreneurial risk-taking spirit to become a trader?
Yeah, what you need to do, and what I say to people is, look, you don't give up your daytime job. Nice thing about trading now, you can do it from anywhere in the world. So I'm based in Monaco or in Mallorca, so it doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to give up your daytime job. You can do this in the evening, play some trades. You take X amount of capital and you trade with that. And then, as you say, you build it up. The way that I've made my wealth, both in businesses and trading, is compounding. You start with one trade or one business, and then those profits go into something else, and so on and so on. Nobody comes into this business, or very few people do, and then they become millionaires overnight. That's not how it really works.
Now, a lot of people talk about your systems, and the one thing that they love about it is the way that your style is to do with trend following. Yeah,
but basically, in all my life and business, and I made a lot of money out of the car phone business and what have you, there's one thing that I've always been, I'm always looking, what are people doing? What are the trends? Like for instance, now I'm looking at, the demographics as people are getting older. Who's got the money? So a lot of people make mistakes both in business and trading. They come in and they trade what they want to trade, or they try and sell a product that they think is a good product. Instead, they should look at the market. They should actually look at